In the later stages of Kamen Rider Agito's airing, 9/11 happened in the United States. This is significant to this video because of the way that the terrorist attack actually affected Kamen Rider. As I explained in the video about Agito, that series was actually meant to be the final Kamen Rider show for a while. Toei and Bandai were worried about this Kamen Rider revival overstaying its welcome and making Kamen Rider as a presence on TV less special. The story goes that when 9/11 happened, a memo circulated within Toei that urged that Kamen Rider should continue, that the show is too important to the children of Japan to give up in the face of a worldwide scale tragedy like this. In 2002, Kamen Rider Agito gave way to Kamen Rider Ryuki, a show that quite genuinely changed everything. It birthed a subgenre of Rider show, it broke a lot of rules for Kamen Rider, way more than Agito did, and it was an unbelievable smash hit. Heisei Kamen Rider is one of the most experimental runs in tokusatsu history, and I'd even argue superhero history as a whole. Kuga and Agito were certainly experimental in their own right, but Ryuki was the one that really proved that the most of the show's rules could still be broken, as long as the fundamentals were still there. And, in fact, this show proved that the bigwigs at Toei and Bandai could be rewarded for this experimentation. This is the show that really marked a turning point for the show, and its methods going into the future. This is a big one, so take a seat. We might be here for a while. Something to understand about shows like Kamen Rider that run non-stop is that series are planned far in advance, while current shows are actually running. There's unfortunately not a whole lot in the way of resources for finding out the ins and outs of production for these shows, at least not in the West. However, it is believed that Kamen Rider and Super Sentai are planned out about 2 years in advance, give or take. At least, this is believed to be the case for the current era of shows. So it is possible that Kamen Rider Ryuki was at least being planned while Kuga was airing, when they didn't know how this was all going to shake out. Or if this is inaccurate to say, it was at the very least being planned at the same time as Agito's airing. I bring this up to say that it may be possible that Kamen Rider Ryuki wasn't always a Kamen Rider show. Ryuki is the first show of many that barely uses the bikes. The belts don't really work like any other belts in shows previous. The belts in Arsenal in Ryuki are actually the first in the show's history to have separate items inserted into the gear to initiate attacks. They also speak phrases to call out attacks, like the actual gear, not just the heroes. And the titular character is actually the only character that has those rider eyes, and they're hidden behind some sort of knight helmet metal grate. There are a ton of riders in this show, and they all have fairly unique design sensibilities, and none of them have the rider eyes except for Ryuki. There's a lot going on here, and very little of it resembles what we knew as Kamen Rider up to that point. Some Google searches and light machine translation. Yeah, I know I don't have a lot to work with, just give me I'm making a point. Translation points in the direction of Ryuki's starting out as some sort of knight hero series concept with warriors pitted against each other is one of the main conceits. In old character designs that can be found associated with the production of Kuga, you can find a mask that looks similar to Ryuki's mask. This mask could have either been associated with the vague knight hero concept before Rider was coming back, or it could have just been folded in as the mask seemed appropriate to bring in as soon as this became a Kamen Rider show. This is all important to understand about Bandai and Toei, because how they produce shows like Kamen Rider and Super Sentai is that they never really get rid of designs or ideas. This is true for a lot of different production studios, or hell, even just individual creatives. But it's always useful to keep a backlog of all these different, more half-baked ideas, so you can grab them whenever they become useful in a way that can lead them to flourish. Some of these knight ideas were probably things that existed back when Metal Hero was winding down. Like, look at B-Fighter Kabuto. That had a ton of B-Fighters all themed after different bugs. And they weren't fighting each other, but a connection could be made, and I can definitely already draw a line from B-Fighter Kabuto all the way to Ryuki, and then all the way to Kabuto later on with all of its bug-themed riders. Then, after the short Kamen Rider revival of Kuga and Agito, a pair of shows to possibly mirror the iconic rider duo dynamic, Toei and Bandai were probably aiming to bring back some rough ideas to make something original. 9/11 happens, and then the memo goes out. Kamen Rider should still exist. Kids need this show. And then, the ideas, since they were likely pretty far along, became Kamen Rider. Even this is sort of unrealistic, though. It'd be a little too hard to turn a show that could have been about knights into a Kamen Rider show, so maybe this was always in consideration. This is a production that likely had a ton of backup plans in case things started to swing a different way. So it's probably less that they transformed everything into Kamen Rider on the fly, and more that they switched over to a more Kamen Rider project that still had all the base elements. At the end of the day, this is mostly speculation, as that's all I can do at this point with the resources available to me and a lot of fans in the West. But the fact remains is that this is a show that from its very inception was meant to change everything. Toei wanted something new. Kamen Rider could not exist in this new Heisei era and just be constant homages to the Showa era. Kuga broke the mold once with down-to-earth, realistic depictions of violence, and Agito broke the mold in format, with a longer, more operatic story featuring 3 protagonists. Ryuki would shatter even this and create a dynamic where Kamen Rider could be just about any kind of show and still work. Producer Shinichiro Shirakura, a face we'll be seeing several times over the course of this series, has been quoted as saying that with Ryuki he wanted to present riders to the viewer that the viewer could not accept. In Ryuki there are 13 riders, 10 in the actual show, fighting each other until the last one is standing. The last one standing gets a wish. With this core concept, it's only natural that several of the riders are in this for either personal gain or just straight up malicious intent. They're still called Kamen Riders, though, and that's the important part. Even in Agito, with its 4 riders, everyone was basically on the same page. Sure, another Agito was kind of a dick for a while there, but everyone was fighting against the unknown and the Overlord of Darkness at the end of the day. Not the case in Ryuki. Ryuki follows Shinji Kido, a well-meaning goof that works at the Ore Journal, an email-based news service. It's 2002, guys! Through a series of very weird events involving monsters that lie within a world inside of our world's reflective surfaces, Shinji becomes Kamen Rider Ryuki. At the same time as his rider debut, he encounters Ren Kiriyama, Kamen Rider Knight. Ren is immediately antagonistic towards Shinji, and after their initial encounter with the first mirror monster that we see, Ren just sort of fucks off with his friend Yui Kanzaki, the third character in our main triad. It soon becomes clear that there is a war between Kamen Riders looming. Yui's brother Shiro is inside of this mirror world for some reason, and he keeps creating riders by binding people to contracts with large-scale mirror monsters called contract beasts. This is for the purpose of pitting all the resulting riders against each other for an all-out war to the death. The last one standing gets a wish granted. Over the course of the show, while getting to know each character intimately, we also get to know their wishes. Ren's wish? To wake up his girlfriend from a coma that she entered before the start of the series. Shinji's wish? To stop the fighting outright. He doesn't want to win, he wants to break the game. Will he succeed? Well, that's the whole tension of the show, isn't it? And basically for Shinji to get to his goal, he has to convince anyone if anyone, to help him out. And if Ren's any indication, that's going to be near impossible. There's a really great arc early on where we are introduced to our third rider, Kamen Rider Scissors. This arc is where the show really sets itself apart in the week-to-week format from the previous two shows, because this new rider is very much framed as the monster of the week. He's honestly kind of a pushover compared to the riders that we'll see later on, but the important thing here is that he's the first rider that we see that, in Shirakira's words, we cannot accept. He's someone that killed an innocent man just to take a vantage point to better dispose of Shinji and Ren. During the decisive battle with Scissors, his card deck is broken and thus breaking his contract with his contract beast. He's then consumed by said beast. The stakes are defined. You must stay in this fight and avoid death by your beast. Either your opponent kills you or your beast does, which can happen either at your deck's destruction or your inactivity in the fight. Fight or die. The reason behind this Rider War Shiro's engineering is unclear for a large part of the show, but that never really becomes a problem because Ryuki does such an unbelievably good job with its cast. See, part of the setup with this Rider War plot is that there are 13 in all, so over the course of Ryuki we get different riders introduced that get to bounce off of Shinji, Ren, and Yui's personalities, and that is where the true magic of the show lies. Each new rider has their own goal and life situation, and this gives each rider a sense of history that extends out way before the beginning of the show. This makes the characters so ridiculously well defined and fun to watch. Take Kitaoka, for instance. Kitaoka is a ruthless top-tier attorney, which has given him an enormous reputation as an arrogant, self-absorbed jackass. And that is definitely true. He's terrible. But he's also been dying for the entire show of some non-specific, life-threatening, incurable disease. And he's also got this assistant, Goro, who is endlessly devoted to Kitaoka's dumbass, and it's the gay, most touching, most heterosexual life-mate partnership I've ever seen in Kamen Rider so far. And Kitaoka's wish? Well, he just wants to continue living. And even for someone as butt-headed as Kitaoka, that's not something you as a viewer want to deny him, and that's just really damn engaging. Also, his rider form, Zolda, is the tightest, most 80s Metal Hero shit ever, and it's probably my favorite rider design in the show, so fuck yeah. Also, between this and G3, I think you can definitely figure out what my type with rider suits is, so, you know, there's that. I could keep going, and I will. There's Tezuka, Kamen Rider Raya, who's a fortune teller that's taking the place of his best friend in the rider battle. His friend was an aspiring pianist who was taken by his contract beast because he refused to fight. Tezuka is important because he's a kindred spirit with Shinji who just wants to stop the fighting outright rather than win. Then there's also Jun, Kamen Rider Guy, who is really just some weird, edgy kid. He constantly tells Shinji that he's not taking the Rider War seriously, when all along, it was probably him that wasn't taking things seriously, considering the weight of the whole thing. And most of the writers in the show are complete assholes, but there's a degree of sadness that blankets over these characters that's just inescapable. The entire premise and character writing works so well in tandem not to just, like, not turn you off when everyone's being ridiculously unlikable and awful. In this particular show, that stuff is just plain outright compelling. The only character that's kind of without this sadness component is Takeshi Asakura, Kamen Rider Oja. Asakura is... God, where do I even fucking start? Well, first off, I think he's one of the most fun writing decisions I've ever seen in a show like this. Asakura is this weird, sadistic vagrant that's just locked up in prison when we first see him, and we're introduced to him through Kitaoka being his lawyer. Asakura's actual crime is unclear, and he's kinda coded as being a killer of some kind, but all the actual stated and shown crimes of his are more of the general assault variety. Which is, like, still not good. But anyways, the important thing here is that Asakura, like, super loves violence. Like, he just can't get enough of it. He'll literally start jonesing for an ass-kicking sometimes, and just, like, start knocking his head against something hard if he can't get a fight going in so long. Dude's unhinged. And when he's introduced into the show, the Rider War situation is at a bit of a standstill. Shinji, Ren, Kitaoka, Tezuka, and Jun are all basically posturing at each other and talking about how seriously they need to take this war to each other while they're beating the tar out of each other. Kitaoka and Jun both took the stance of being ruthless to get ahead in the fight. Shinji and Tezuka both want to stop the fight outright and unite everyone. And Ren is in the middle. He postures like he can kill anyone at any time, so he's kind of on Kitaoka and Jun's side, but he just doesn't have it in him. Either this is a result of him hanging around Shinji too much, or just him being too damn compassionate for his own good. And this constantly stops him from getting truly ahead. This section of the show kind of boils down to a bunch of dogs in a circle barking at each other, egging on the other ones to try and see which one will make a move. Asakura is like a lion that was just let loose in the same yard as the dogs. They don't stand a fucking chance. Like I said earlier, Asakura is one of the most fun writing decisions I've personally ever seen because the dude's very presence ups the ante so hard. He just enters the scene and immediately becomes everyone scrambling to deal with Asakura. To make matters even worse, he immediately kills Jun in his debut fight. The stakes are raised. Ryuki for a while becomes a show where the cast kind of navigates themselves around Asakura. The situation goes from bad to worse when Tezuka bites it, and Asakura ends up contracting both Tezuka and Jun's old monsters. All three monsters combine into a big fuck-off one named Genocider. I really, really needed you guys to know that its name is fucking Genocider. Holy shit. So, like, while this madness is going on, another rider is revealed to the viewer, Odin, the rider form of Shiro. Side note, I don't know if this is just the case for anyone else or if it's just me, but I really thought for a while that Shiro was just going to be a watcher type, pulling the strings from far away and manipulating the game to fit his rules. I never really put together that he'd actually partake in the game himself. So yeah, so he just kind of shows up and just literally bitch slaps the whole cast.
Nobody seen nobody.
And then he uses his time vent to kick off the best clip show of all time. I'm not going to get into it here, but just watch the show and you'll know what's up. It becomes very clear that Shiro has his own goal that he's fighting for, and that he might have just been holding off until now just to see who would get weeded out so that he could swoop in and win the whole thing. You know, that's some real motherfucker shit right there. So after this, I feel like it would be fairly normal to think, hey, alright, you know, so that's all this show's got. We've got the main villain, so this is the cast we'll be working with for the whole show. Very interesting. But that's actually where you'd be dead wrong. So, to back up a bit, Shiro's backstory is actually a bit complicated because basically what's known up to this point is that he was working on some fucking strange shit at the university that he worked at, and that this was in pursuit of some goal involving his sister. You know, Yui, remember her? How I'm terrible for not mentioning her very much? I love her, and she's more important than this video lets on, but I only have so much time, and she's not a writer, and just please forgive me. But trust me, she's great. Shiro basically discovered the mirror world, and developed the rider deck system all by him fucking self, and in his experiments he got some people hurt, including Ren's girlfriend. This is the event that put her into a coma forever ago, and he fled to the mirror world and only returns to irritate the shit out of the other riders. At some point along the way, this other professor named Kagawa came across Shiro's work, and Shiro was all like cagey about it and took it away, but I love this. Kagawa has a photographic memory, and that's not a thing, and I love whenever it's just a thing in stories. It's so goofy. It's amazing. Please don't think photographic memories are real. That's not... like, people can have, like, super good memories, but photographic memories aren't, like... Oh, God, it's... I love this so much. And he ended up trailing him by copying his research from his mind because he remembers so good. And he's trying to figure out how to stop Shiro's plans. So now we have this other character involved. Kagawa makes an alternative deck, which doesn't count in the official rider count for this show, but it's sick as hell. This pisses Shiro the fuck off, though, as this alternative thing is interfering with his game. One of Kagawa's pupils, Tojo, takes on the mantle of Kamen Rider Tiger. There's also this other pupil that's been in the show for this whole time and was connected to some stuff with Yui, but he also dies horribly, like, right after Tiger's debut, so, you know, there's that. And with these characters, we come to the character arcs that I think best to dig into the heart of what Ryuki's trying to tackle at a larger level. This is where that running theme of trauma really comes into play for me. Kagawa and his dudes, from the jump, start going on and on about becoming heroes. To them, heroism requires sacrifice. Sacrifice is noble, and being the man that decides what is sacrificed is being a hero. It's one of the, hopefully, more obviously wrong takes about heroism that Kamen Rider has offered up to this point, but it's something that the viewer and Shinji cannot accept. Shinji really shines all over this show, but his interactions with Kagawa's crew are some of my favorite in the show. This is something the show does a wonderful job with at large, constantly poking and prodding at the motivations of every rider to see if they'll give up their fight or not. Kitaoka, over the course of the show, kind of loses some steam and ends up only really fighting when challenged, mostly when it comes to his slight rivalry with Asakura. Asakura has a small arc where his life is being threatened by the fact that he now has to feed 3 contract monsters with killing mirror monsters. And he eventually just overcomes this by just being more bloodthirsty? Great, cool, awesome, that's just what everyone needs. And Ren has a really great arc where his entire reason for fighting is thrown into question when his girlfriend actually just wakes up in the middle of the show. Everyone around Ren questions why he keeps ignoring her, running off to fight even though he has every reason not to, or at the very least take a rest. But he insists that he still has to win. Of course, this has practical reasons, you know, fight or die, all that mess. But you get the impression that he's fighting for more than just his girlfriend at this point, though. And then there's Shinji, faced with this Kagawa situation. Over the course of the show, Shinji and Ren, to a lesser extent, have been grappling with the thought of fighting at all. The thought of being a killer, a cause for trauma in any way, is just something he can't accept. He's fallen into this, though, and he's seeing others grapple with this and just accept their situation, and it's something Shinji just can't bear to witness. It's such a great arc for a Kamen Rider, even if it's distinctly different from what we've seen so far. When faced with a situation like this, it's very easy for people to fall into a villainous role by circumstance. There's no better option sometimes. Shinji dreams of a better option despite the facts, and the show keeps presenting him with reasons to give it up. For one, he's paired with probably one of the most difficult guys in the entire universe to reason with in Ren. He's given Tezuka, someone that shares in his ideals, and then Tezuka's swiftly taken away from him. In Odin, he's faced with a nearly unstoppable opponent, someone that can alter time at their whim, and now he's faced with Kagawa and Tojo, people that want to become heroes and stop the mirror world, but they're dedicated in doing it in the wrong way. It's almost like they want to sacrifice others to get to their goal, and that's something that Shinji just can't accept. This comes to a head with the brilliant moment where Shiro tests Kagawa. Right before jumping into the mirror world to fight other riders, Shiro tells Kagawa that if he jumps in, Shiro will have mirror monsters kill Kagawa's family. Kagawa pauses for a moment and then decides that the sacrifice is worth it. Shinji had been MIA for a good portion of this episode, and in the middle of the big fight, he jumps in to tell Kagawa that he helped his family. It's an incredible moment of extreme kindness from Shinji that kind of just breaks Kagawa down. Not in a huge way. Kagawa doesn't cry or anything, but from this point onward, Kagawa finds a lot of worth in what he almost lost, and spends more time with his family. Tojo finds this ridiculous. He's practically seething with anger at Kagawa after this point, and after a dinner where Kagawa brings Tojo to meet his family, Tojo kills him. The final rider to be introduced before the endgame, in an almost mirror in format to Scissors, is Kamen Rider Emperor, Mitsuru Sano. Scissors was all about playing the game, and playing it well, more as a lone wolf type. Emperor is all about trying to ally with people, seeking compensation for his services. Sano's pretty down on his luck, so he's just trying to work his way up to a prosperous life. There's a lot of great stuff with him trying to sell his services to basically the whole cast, including fucking Asakura, and he ends up hanging around Tojo quite a bit, who's harbored a pretty violent rivalry with Asakura, and by association with this, Sano kinda just gets in too deep. His dad dies, and as a result, Sano comes into a bunch of money when he inherits his dad's company, but by the time everything starts working out, it's too late. He can't turn away from the battle. He jumps in for a battle that would be his last, and he's betrayed by Tojo and then finished off by Asakura, and his death scene is just agonizing. What was a shocking but ultimately relieving death in Scissors near the beginning of the show is now a harsh, agonizing death in Emperor towards the end. These two arcs show just how much the show's changed and how successful it's been in that. The setup for Ryuki's endgame is quite dire. Tojo and Asakura are just at each other's throats constantly. Kitaoka shows signs of fast approaching death, and Ren and Shinji keep showing indecisiveness. Ren can't bring himself to kill for his cause, and Shinji can't get through to anyone. All the while, Shiro enacts a time limit to hasten the ending of the battle. The story behind Yui and Shiro is revealed. Yui had actually died long ago, and by unknown means, her mirror image replaced her, and she's living on a time limit, for when she turns 20, she'll disappear. And Shiro has been working to stop this whole time. For whatever reason, this Rider War was the method he reckoned would fix this situation. And along the way, he actually died as well, and his mirror image is what we've been seeing this whole time. At the end of the day, this entire war, this long, meandering string of endless death and trauma and pain, is all because of one man's inability to accept his situation. He should have been cherishing all this time he had with Yui, which could have been much shorter than 20 years, but instead he wasted all of his time trying to stop the inevitable. Again, like with Kitaoka and several other characters in this show, this isn't something you can completely fault the characters for. It's human to want this. Hell, Shinji can't accept the situation, why should Shiro? They're in a way mirror images of each other. Neither can accept their lot in life, but Shinji chooses a path of pacifism and humanity, where Shiro chooses a path of destruction, sacrifice, anything to help his sister, to heal his pain. Yui even outright states that she rejects Shiro's methods to save her. She doesn't want a new life if it means all this unending violence. Yui ends up fading away, gone forever from her friends and her brother after some deliberation on this point. This goes right into the ending, which is honestly one of the most shocking, affecting, and probably difficult endings in Kamen Rider. I always put a spoiler disclaimer at the beginning of these videos, as I can't really dig into these shows properly without spoiling them. So you already know I'm going to talk about this stuff, but I still want to emphasize, this ending is really surprising and great. So if you've been sold up to this point and you haven't seen the show before, maybe just watch the series on your own. Just figured this would have needed a reiteration. Shinji's selflessness is brought to its most extreme point with his abrupt death. After all the bodies that have dropped up to this point, including the painful endings of other characters like Kitaoka, Tojo, and even Asakura, nothing is as shocking and as heartbreaking as Shinji's death. Mirror monsters reach critical mass and just start swarming the real world. And in the midst of this, Shinji saves a young girl and is stabbed in the back by one of the monsters. It's such a simple end. And after this, he has one last battle alongside Ren, where they destroy a ton of the monsters. And then, in the aftermath, in Ren's arms, Shinji urges Ren to just simply survive. And then Ren goes in for the final battle. Shiro and Ren have their final bout, but in the midst of this, Shiro thinks over Yui's words right before she passed. That no matter what, she could never accept a new life by Shiro's methods, and he just breaks. Ren wins, and he reaches out towards the light and accepts the prize. The final scene that follows is just amazing, as it seems that Ren's wish went further than just his own happiness, but it was one that kept the happiness of the entire cast in mind. A character who was at the very beginning one of the most selfish and single-minded people you could possibly meet, blossomed into someone capable of so much good. And you know that deep down he had it the whole time. I won't bother going into too much detail about the final scene, it's just something you kind of have to see for yourself. This video has been all about the characters and their dynamics with each other. With this show in particular, it's about the only way to really tackle it in a huge, comprehensive way like this. Ryuki kind of changed everything, and it's one of the few standalone Rider shows with genuine imitators. A whole sort of genre within Kamen Rider starts here with the Rider War genre, found in shows like Kabuto, Gaim, and Ex-Aid. People, as a whole, probably don't consider that a genre within a genre, but I kind of do, so I don't know. You could even kind of say that a huge landmark anime like Madoka Magica was actually pretty inspired by Ryuki. This show is just massive. On top of the regular movie, there was also a TV special and a Rider Time spin-off from Kamen Rider CEO, all of which offering new content in regards to Riders, character dynamics, and alternate takes on the ending arc. There's also the American adaptation, Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. That might be its own video. I don't know. You can't tell me what to do. And Kamen Rider Ryuki really got people thinking about what Kamen Rider and, in turn, what heroism really means. It's up there with Kuga as one of the great superhero works to come out of this genre, and it bores down into some foundational ideas for the genre and really engages with those ideas in an empathetic, multifaceted way. It's really brilliant. As a show for kids growing up in the wake of giant global tragedies and entering into a future world where the internet would change the way that news travels and affects the minds of people young and old, Ryuki is incredibly powerful. Instead of being a comforting show, it's a harsher reality. A lesson to young people that humanity has a tendency to lean towards destruction and sacrifice for the sake of their own goals. As to not be completely hopeless, Ryuki also provides heroes insistent on the idea that this is not the only way, that people can win out with compassion, and that there's always another option. That's so valuable, not just as a superhero show, but especially as a kids show. I feel like there's a tendency to treat kids shows as entertainment that's lesser. A shackle attached to stories that some fans think could work better without the consideration of how kids will take the shows in question. I'd say that Ryuki is actually one of the better examples of a show not just working, but thriving in the fact that it's a show aimed at kids. Sure, there's stuff here for people of all ages, sure it gets pretty intense, but the fact that the creators here take a knee in shows like this and talk on the kids' level about these tough subjects is what this stuff is all about. That aspect heightens this whole thing. It's so incredible for a show like this to almost act as a pop quiz, a test to see who the children can recognize as a hero and who's not, and what truly makes a hero, and showing that nuance really makes for an even stronger idea of what a hero can be in a kid's mind. The foundation that Kuga built grows even stronger here with Ryuki. Alright, and that was my essay on Ryuki. I'm going to keep this little end tag thing short. I just want to say that I'm hard at work on a few different things. I've changed my Patreon over from like monthly charges to per video charges, so just because some things in my life are happening and I might be getting a day job on top of all this, so these videos might take longer than just a month to come out, but I have ideas for shorter stuff to come out along the way, so it doesn't have to be a big long wait. And if you do donate to my Patreon, you're only going to get charged for every time there's one of these really big essays comes out, and that will not happen more than just once a month, so no worries there. So yeah, so next month's video in October, I'm not going to say what the subject is, but I'm really excited about what I'm going to be talking about. It's kind of new for me, and I think it's new for the channel. You might be able to guess, but I'm not going to mention it. I'm just going to wait to drop it whenever it comes out next month. But in the meantime, between now and then, I may put out a video about all the Ryuki side stuff, because I think that stuff is really fun, and I have just recently watched it. So if I can put together something for that, then you'll probably see that video. If not, then just ignore everything I just said. It's worthless. Follow me on Twitter at anti-laser, anti_laser, I believe. And if you want to see any of my more current hot takes on like 01 and Ryu Soldier and stuff, and among other things. And yeah, so yeah, get excited for all that other stuff. And I think next month may see the debut of Discuss All Monsters, the Godzilla and other Toho monster movie podcast. So be on the lookout for that. See you guys later. Have a good one.